Well, welcome along to Hong Kong Direct, your weekly instalment of everything Hong Kong racing related. Have we got an interesting show coming up for you on this week's episode. But before we get to the main part of today's programme, some news from the licensing committee here in Hong Kong. And there is to be a new name on the trainers roster here in Hong Kong for next season. His name is Pierre Ng. He's 38 years of age and he's been granted a licence for next season. A man of vast experience, having spent time with Paul O'Sullivan, also John Sides for a lengthy period, and more recently Francis Loy, and guiding or helping to guide Golden 60 through his campaign. So Pierre Ng is the new trainer to be licensed here in Hong Kong. And also news on the jockey front as well. Angus Chung will be returning from South Australia, indentured to John O'Connor. He's ridden 76 winners and he is to join the weighing room ranks here at the Hong Kong Jockey Club for next season. So thoroughly looking forward to seeing both men in action. Do head across to allthewshkjc.com for more information on that. But the main part of today's show is featuring one man that won't be on the list of trainers for next season. It is Paul O'Sullivan, of course, who has decided to draw stumps on his training career here in Hong Kong. And it was my pleasure to sit down with him earlier on this week and go through some of the memories of training plenty of winners here in the city.
Vital King with a late burst. Floral Pegasus in front. Vital King lunges. Oh, close in the derby. Aero Velocity, he's kicking on the inside, and Zach Burton takes out the sprint on Aero Velocity.
Shadow runners in front, and there's 500 for Paul O'Sullivan.
Paul, 18 years in Hong Kong will come to an end shortly for you. You've made the decision to retire from training here at the Hong Kong Jockey Club. Just talk us through that process in your mind and the decision that you've come to now after all those years.
Yeah, well, firstly, Hong Kong's been fantastic to me, but I decided probably 3 or 4 years ago that this would probably be the time to go home. I'm probably going to find it much easier to go back to the New Zealand way of life and do what I've got to do at the age of 62 than at the age of 66. So, you know, I've got a lot of things to do and hopefully a lot of travel to do, but now's the right time for me.
Just before we get into some of the highlights, because there have been many throughout your career since you arrived in 2004, before arriving in Hong Kong, obviously Wexford Stables is a big part of your family. You were an 11-time champion trainer with your father, Dave. Just coming to Hong Kong, how big of a buzz was that at the time for you? I mean, I read some quotes in the press from years ago, and you were very much a proud New Zealander to be able to come to Hong Kong.
Well, it's a great honour, you know. I think it's sought by many, many trainers all around the world. And I remember getting the call from Mr. Kelly. It was about the 9th of May, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was certainly a very big deal for me, and I think a big deal for New Zealand.
Just when you did arrive, obviously it's all very new, it's very different. Some of those earlier days, I mean, did it take long for you to establish yourself? What was the feel from your point of view in regards to coming from New Zealand, which is obviously a very different style to Hong Kong? Yeah,
well, look, I remember the first day the track opened and shaking my head and thinking, what am I going to do with these? And but Hong Kong's a place, you know, the way we train, we were training them out of paddocks, the way the Australians train, the English train. It's a place you adapt or die. And, you know, if you're going to continue to do what you did in your home country and it's not working, well, you've got to try and work it out as quickly as you can. It took me a long time.
Floral Pegasus clear in the derby. Vital King with a late burst. Floral Pegasus in front. Vital King lunges. Oh, close in the derby. Vital King's lunged at Floral Pegasus.
Vital King, if we can start with him, I mean, he arrived a few years after you arrived. He won a derby, Brett Preble. He won by a nose. I mean, the first real good horse. Did you feel then you were established here in Hong Kong with a horse like him?
Well, you're only as good as your last 4 weeks racing here in Hong Kong. I don't think anybody really gets established, but certainly, yeah, a few do. But no, I think at all times you were sort of looking to improve and looking to maintain what you got, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster for me. We've had some ups and downs, but you know, I feel, as I'm leaving now, I feel like quite confident in the way I'm preparing the horses.
You've said that some of your biggest thrills in racing have been here. I mean, that's quite a statement, given that you were an 11-time champion in New Zealand, you've had a Cox Plate winner, you've had winners in Japan. Obviously, we'll get to more Japanese success shortly. But winning Group 1s here in Hong Kong, where does that rank for a trainer? I mean, it's such a prestigious place to train a big winner, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the Derby, that's Hong Kong's Melbourne Cup. And it's just so competitive here. You know, in New Zealand, I would take on 60, 70 yearlings every year, and you knew for sure 2 or 3 of them were Group 1 horses. But here, with the limited amount of horses you've got going through, you know, to bring one through to that level is very satisfying.
We can't talk without speaking about a certain Aero Velocity. Now, he was an absolute superstar, wasn't he? Take us back to the first day that you set eyes on Aero Velocity. What was your overall impression of this horse?
Well, I recall I wasn't at the yearling sales the year he was bought, and Brother Lance rang up and he said, "There's a Pins horse here." He said, "We're just going to buy him, no matter." And we certainly had our budgets buying horses, but he said, "This one's got to be bought." So he bought him. At the time, when he was 3, he went to the trials and won a trial pretty easily. And at that time, I was sort of in a bit of a trough, and I hawked him all around Hong Kong, and any one of 20 or 30 people could have bought him. So I couldn't sell him, and so I rang Lance up. I said, let's PP him. So he went to a place called Manawatu, won easily his first start. Same thing, I hawked him all around, and just couldn't sell him for love or money. And then a young guy, was younger than me anyway, Daniel Young, he rang me up and he said, "Do you want to have a coffee?" So we went and had a coffee. Very interesting character. And at the end of an hour's conversation, he said, "Well, listen, I've got a PP." And I said, "Well, have I got a PP for you?" And away it went.
Aero Velocity in front from Pinophobia and Straight Girl. The trio fighting it out. Aero Velocity, he's kicking on the inside. Pinophobia's got the job to get him. Aero keeps kicking, and Zach Purton takes out the sprint on Aero Velocity.
Again, reading through old articles, you know, you said that one of your biggest thrills, achievements in racing was winning that race in Japan. What does that mean? I mean, to go from Hong Kong, I mean, it happens more now, shall we say, but to be able to do it, you know, in a big race like that, and obviously you went to Singapore as well, and was that just like the pinnacle for you to be able to do that?
Yeah, I think for sure that my greatest thrill in racing would be his win in Japan, in a race that begins with T and I can't pronounce it. You know, the big contingent of owners went across with Daniel, and you seem to find the further you travel them, the tougher it is on the way home if you get beat, or the easier it is on the way home if you win. And to go there and win that, Dad won a Japan Cup there many years ago, so evidently the first father and son to go to Japan and win individual Group 1, so it was extremely satisfying.
Hak Sun Moon at the 250 metre mark. Mickey Isle on the scene, and Aero Velocity there as well. Hak Sun Moon leads at the moment from Mickey Isle. Zach Burton getting desperate on Aero Velocity. They've got to catch Hak Sun Moon. Aero Velocity jumping out of the ground. Aero Velocity goes to Hak Sun Moon. Hong Kong gets up and wins.
Looking ahead to the future, Paul, obviously, you know, you've spent so much time here, you've achieved so much. It's never been that easy for you, has it? I mean, there has been ups and downs, as you mentioned a few moments ago.
Yeah.
At any point, did you think perhaps this announcement may have come any sooner, or was a horse like Aero Velocity the sort of the spur that was required to keep going and keep taking everybody on here?
Oh, no, no stage did I ever consider leaving, you know, even in the tough times. And in fact, I remember as a kid, I'd be 17 or 18, and some of those old horse trainers, and there's a guy called Colin Gillings, and he said one day, he said, "I'll tell you something, son." That's how they used to talk to you. "I'll tell you something, son." He said, "Never let them know it's hurting, son. Never let them know it's hurting." And he's quite right, you know, you just keep your head up. And another old trainer, Bill Sanders, who was leading trainer for, you know, many, many years. And he said to me, "Son," he said, "never raise your voice, son. Never raise your voice. So raise your voice, they've got you." So I remember those two things, you know, throughout my time here in Hong Kong.
Yeah, I think that certainly epitomises your character, Paul, for sure. So on the future, now you've travelled horses. What about yourself personally? I know that you're keen on perhaps going and seeing a bit more of the world. Is that very much forefront in your mind? Yeah,
very much so. There's a number of projects I can do back in New Zealand, but those projects run out. So it's pretty, and sort of left school young, and like anybody in racing that's worked there full time, you don't have a lot of social skills. You know, I don't play golf and tennis, and so I've got to start to pick up a few of those. you know, my greatest fear of leaving here is getting out of bed and saying, what do I do today? So I've got to get myself motivated and find another passion.
It's tremendous. Paul O'Sullivan then, who will bow out after 18 years training here in Hong Kong. Many big wins along the way, obviously notably Aero Velocity, one of those. Vital King though, how exciting was that derby. But we wish Paul very well indeed for the future, and he will be missed by many of that, I am sure. Let's take a look at the diary coming up in the next few meetings here in Hong Kong. Paul's actually got 7 horses entered this weekend. That's the 12th of June, of course, at Sha Tin. We're back at Sha Tin next Sunday. No Wednesday fixture next week at Happy Valley. Obviously, we are simulcasting the Royal Meeting from Ascot and Happy Valley the following Wednesday. So that's what's coming up here in Hong Kong. As we leave you on this week's show, it wouldn't be a Paul O'Sullivan interview without a bit of Aero Velocity, of course. So we're going to leave you with a classic replay of the Great Horse's second win in the Hong Kong Sprint back in 2016. Many thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the show, and we look forward to your company next week. Goodbye.
Aero Velocity, the 8-year-old, rolls up now to take the lead. Aero Velocity from Penophobia. Lucky Bubbles on the scene late. Aero Velocity in front. Lucky Bubbles trying to reach him. Aero Velocity, what a grand 8-year-old he is. He takes his second sprint. Aero Velocity